Welcome back to Women Creating Wealth. We talk a lot about Airbnb and using it for house hacking and stuff on this show. So I thought I would talk to you today about the changes that Airbnb is making with its Winter 2020 release. One big change, and it's always been a challenge, like let's imagine that you have to verify guests' identity. Back in the day, you didn't even have to upload a copy of your ID into Airbnb. Now they want to actually see your IDs. I've been on Airbnb for a long time. They don't have a copy of my driver's license. I don't know if the next time I try to book, if they're going to ask me for that. But imagine how complicated it would be to actually verify that that driver's license is valid and that it belongs to me. And now add some different countries in there. Let's imagine I'm coming from Honduras, from Chile, from Antigua, from every country that you can think of. So that is something that Airbnb has been working on a lot, because if I'm a lousy guest and I am booking and I get bad reviews and I get kicked off of Airbnb, and then I just go and say, okay, now I'm somebody else and I'm from some country that you really can't verify. I could keep staying with people, trashing their houses and being a complete disaster. And you'd never really be able to catch me because I'm using a different ID every time. Like Airbnb is very cognizant that that's a concern that hosts have, that the same person who's checking in is the person who's making the reservation, and that that person at least doesn't have a bad history on Airbnb. They might have no history, but at least it won't be bad. So they're working, I think this first rollout is like 40 countries that they're able to work with to verify the identity and that it's a real person, that it's a valid ID. Eventually, they're going to be able to verify every country. So that's pretty great. Another big complaint about Airbnb guests has been parties. I've had this situation myself where somebody guessed this. I think I told you the story before. This guy, 20-year-old kid, he says, which is a kid. 20 is a kid when you're 59. This 20-year-old person said that he wanted to book my place to work on his dissertation. And then the next thing I get is a call from the state police telling me that the neighbors called to break up a party there, and that they had 25 people there. There were people that when the cops came, this kid jumped out of a second-story window and broke it, took the glass and the window, everything with him when he jumped out. I mean, it's a bad scene, really bad scene. And as a host, imagine if that was my first booking. I would be completely turned off of Airbnb. So they're working very hard to make sure that there aren't any red flags that would make the computer algorithms think that potentially this is a possible party situation. For example, why would they have shown him my house when he says he's a single person? That particular place, it was sleeping for 9 accommodations, if you included like the sofa bed and stuff. So why would they allow a single person, one person, to rent that? Maybe they would raise alarm flags and they just wouldn't even present that as one of the options. Another thing that naturally hosts are concerned about is like, what happens if something gets damaged, right? How am I going to get the money from this person who stayed there? Before it was like on the honor system that if somebody trashed your place, then they would have to pay for it, because even if you ask for a security deposit, Airbnb didn't collect the security deposit until there was a problem. And then good luck, right? So now they offer $3 million in damage protection. Now I don't know how easy or difficult it would be to get that money if you had damages. You have to prove that there are damages. I don't know what exactly is involved on the other side as far as getting the person to admit that they damaged the place. I've known people in the past, before they had this $3 million damage protection, who were not able to prove that that guest caused that damage. So before I rely too heavily on that damage protection, I would definitely want to learn more about it. Well, it's not even in place yet. So I haven't talked to anybody, obviously, who's ever tried to use it. But it does include things like art and valuables, autos and boats, damage that a pet would do, lost income if something happens because of a damage, and deep cleaning. For example, that kid who had the party, one of his icky friends vomited all over the second floor, and I had to clean that up. So that deep cleaning would have been covered by that $3 million damage protection. The other thing that Airbnb is now offering, which I think you should actually have yourself, is $1 million liability insurance. So somebody falls down the stairs, someone gets hurt in your home, yeah, somebody breaks into the home when you have a guest there and steals their stuff, or there's a fire or something. So that would all be covered under this $1 million liability insurance policy that Airbnb is using to cover their hosts. And that also is obviously a great thing for guests. The other thing that's great for guests and for hosts is a 24-hour safety line. So let's say that you rented a place. This has happened. I mean, you don't know where this thing is, right? You rent a place online and then you get there and it's nighttime and you're like, oh my God, I'm creeped out. You know, they're like, I'm sure these people are doing drugs and like there's all kinds of people on the street. It look like, you just don't feel comfortable. You don't feel safe getting out of the car or the taxi. You can call the safety line, or even you're in the house, right? Let's say you're in the house and you hear noises. It sounds like somebody's trying to break in, whatever, you call the safety line. And the other thing that has actually happened to me at that same house where there was the party is there was a bad ice storm. And there was like a hill leading up to the house and the stairs were icy. And the people called Airbnb and said, we don't feel comfortable even going in the driveway because it's so icy and potentially dangerous. So it worked out great because at that time, and I don't know if this policy has changed, but Airbnb put them up in a hotel. They contacted me and said, do you mind if we put them in a hotel? I'm like, no, that would be great. So Airbnb paid for the hotel, and obviously I didn't get paid for that night, but that's totally fine, right? Otherwise, I would have had to do something to help these people, which might not have been that easy. So another thing that they used to do is if you had a problem with the Airbnb that you were staying in, sometimes they would try to book you into another one that they knew was available. Again, whether or not they're still doing that, I don't know, because some things did change when they became a public company. Airbnb is also adding new categories, which could be helpful for people, both whether you're booking on Airbnb or whether you're going to be a host. But one is the category of new, which is kind of fun. If your listing has gone on Airbnb in the past 10 weeks, you can get the little new tag. And, a lot of people want to try new things. So that can help you to be appearing a little higher on the search results, and potentially people who are looking just for new stuff. There's another one called Top of the World. So if you have a listing that's over 10,000 feet above sea level, or you have great views, you can get this Top of the World rating, which again, if you're the one who's the guest, it's a fun thing to search for. Airbnb is also adding a category called trending. So if there's a house that for whatever reason is getting a ton of attention, you can see it. You can look for trending listings and find out, oh, wow, this place is really cool. I can see why so many people are looking at it, and then you won't miss out on it. Where, otherwise it may have been buried miles below, on page 3. They have also a category called adapted, which basically is an accessible listing. That means that you can get in and out of the listing and in and out of the bedroom and the bathroom in a wheelchair. So that's fantastic, because the other thing is that they're verifying that as well, because sometimes people could say, oh yeah, it's wheelchair friendly, but then you get in there and you're like, you can't sit in a wheelchair and get yourself onto the toilet. You can't sit in a wheelchair and prepare your meal. So if you have an adapted home, this is a fantastic benefit for you as a host. And if you would like an adapted home, right, much, much easier to search for and know, because Airbnb is actually going to verify these listings. There are 2 other categories which are interesting, called Play and Hanox. And I don't know if I pronounced that right, but so Play means that there's something really fun about this space. Maybe it has a game room, a pool table, a water slide, or some other cool feature. And the final new category that's being added as part of the Winter 2020 special release is Hanox, which is a traditional Korean home that is made of natural materials. There are some other features that are being added just for hosts, but 2 of my favorites are Fast Pay, which allows your debit card to be credited within 30 minutes or less in the US only. And the other is retaliatory review protection. So what happens if someone is a jerk and they leave you a crappy review, and really it wasn't your fault, right? Maybe they were high maintenance the whole time and you just couldn't do anything to make them happy, and you just feel like, look, this really isn't fair. Or something happened that was totally outside of your control and the guest gives you a crappy review. Now you have the option of asking Airbnb to review the conversation that you have with the guest, which is why you should always only converse on Airbnb, and then potentially block that review from that guest if it does not seem warranted. So that's great protection for hosts if you have a kind of a pesky person. Now, you know I'm a big fan of Airbnb for house hacking, and I hope that these changes that Airbnb is making as part of their 2022 release make you even more comfortable to use it. Oh, the other thing, oh my gosh, I forgot almost the most important thing. If you want to put your listing on Airbnb, they are now offering free support for setting up your listing from Superhosts. Now, I do that as well, but I help you, but I charge you. Obviously, it's more comprehensive. They're going to just help you to fill in the boxes, and I do a lot more than that. But it's great, right? If you aren't sure, there are lots of nooks and crannies in Airbnb, and you have to be in the right menu to do everything and set everything up right. So if you're having trouble, you just get together with one of these Airbnb Superhost mentors who will help you to complete your listing. So that's another great feature that's being added as part of the Winter 2022 release. That is it for us this week. Next week, we're going to do something really fun, and I think next week we're going to have another special guest for you. I hope you like special guests. And as always, I'd love to hear your feedback and any input that you have, even if it is not positive. For example, someone from Germany said they didn't like the way I said certain words. And I love that. I love hearing that. I think it's interesting. Maybe I'll take voice lessons for 2023. Maybe that'll be part of my goal. The new year is coming. What are you going to do? What are your plans? What are you thinking? Do you have yourself set and ready to make some amazing accomplishments in 2023? Because if you're not sure, maybe add this idea of house hacking to your list. Have a fantastic week, and I look forward to seeing you again next week.